Howdy, my totally as always tubular gamers, and we're back with, you guessed it, another ranking video. And today's ranking video is going to be on Sonic. Yeah, we're going to have another Sonic ranking video. Over the past, couple years I've looked at some Sonic games, but today's Sonic video is going to be a little different. We're going to be looking at one of the eras of Sonic. We're going to be ranking all of the Sonic Boost games. Now, for those unfamiliar with Sonic and what the Boost era is really it's Sonic Unleashed until the modern day when it comes to modern Sonic releases, where basically the whole game revolves around boosting really fast, going really fast, and some really exhilarating level design. So the Boost era really got started with Sonic Rush on the DS, but it didn't really get off the ground running until Sonic Unleashed in 2008, and really almost every Sonic game since then has been part of the Boost era, including this Sonic Frontiers. Allegedly, with Sonic Frontiers we're entering into a new era, but I thought I would throw Sonic Frontiers into there as well because it is the latest game and it has a lot of Boost elements. But I think it would also make this list a lot more interesting since I've actually ranked every 3D Sonic game. But we're not only including 3D Sonic games here, we're including every Boost game, including Sonic Rush Adventure, Sonic Colors on DS, and then of course, Sonic Unleashed, Generations, Colors, Forces, and finally Frontiers. The Boost era, like every era of Sonic, has been heavily criticized throughout the years, and a lot of people question if these games are even any good at this point, especially Sonic Frontiers now, which has somewhat of a mixed reception from the critics, but the fans seem to be loving it. I myself am in that camp, but we'll save that for when I get to Frontiers. We'll be ranking these games worst to best based on their quality, how well they've aged, how easy they are to pick up and play, how engaging they are, level design, all that good stuff. And of course, this is just my opinion. Let me know down below how you disagree with me, because I'm sure there'll be plenty of people to disagree with me, or if you think I'm stretching by making a list like this, or you know what, just tell me what you're feeling. Like, share, comment, sub, all that good stuff. This list will probably be outdated at some point, so keep that in mind. Let's just get right into it. Out of all the Boost games, what do I think is the weakest? And so here we have the very uninspired Sonic Forces, released a number of years ago. Out of all the games on this list, this is one of the more generic Sonic games. The story is not the most exciting. It sees Eggman showing up with this new character known as Infinite, and he's basically able to get all of Sonic's baddies from his past to basically wipe Sonic out. Sonic's friends then start a resistance, I know it sounds pretty silly, with an OC that you create and you bust Sonic out of there and have to take Eggman out. The story really is nothing special. I feel like it should have been much more exciting with the characters involved, but unfortunately it just kind of falls by the wayside by the end of it. Infinite was better than Mephiles, I'll give him that. The plot was pretty silly, and there is some really silly dialogue in this game, particularly from Knuckles. So in this game you actually get to play as more than modern boosting Sonic. You get to play as classic Sonic, who shows up for some reason, and this was the Sonic game with your OC, where your DeviantArt fantasies finally come to a real game and you create your character, and your character actually has some levels. Now, all three of these gameplay styles, I'll be real, they're just not very good. They've all been done significantly better in other Sonic games. The gameplay of Sonic Forces across all the characters is very generic, kind of bland, uninspired, and it's really a been there done that situation over and over. Modern Sonic with the boost formula, like, it's been done so many times better in Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Colors, and this game just doesn't really have any interesting level design for the most part. It's very uninspired, and it's also short. Once the levels start getting interesting, they're over, like that. They're all over in a couple minutes. A lot of them feel like they're on autopilot, and you feel like you just kind of turn your brain off and the game almost plays itself. And don't get me wrong, sometimes the other Sonic games, when you're just boosting all over the place, could feel like that too, but it's especially prevalent here, maybe because it's one of the later boost games, but it really just didn't do much for me. Classic Sonic is just awful, in my opinion. These are some of the worst 2D levels that Sonic has had in some time. They're just not fun, they're not interesting. Classic Sonic just feels horrible, his momentum's all kind of whack. And then we have the Rookie, which has the most interesting levels. They throw some little gimmicks in here, like with the hook shot, and these could be pretty alright, but again, it ends so quickly. This game is incredibly short. This is the shortest of any of the 3D Sonic games. It's like 3, maybe 4 hours long, and it's just really unremarkable, and ultimately just very forgettable. Music's pretty good, the presentation's fine enough, but I really don't recommend this one. And so here we have Sonic Rush Adventure, released for the DS in 2007. Now, Sonic Rush Adventure really tried to build on top of that original Sonic Rush for the DS. So the game sees Sonic and Tails on the tornado when they get sucked into a tornado and end up on some island. They meet this raccoon named Marine, who wants to be a sailor and is pretty annoying, and then they meet up with Blaze. It turns out they're in Blaze's dimension actually, and they have to take out the evil Captain Whisker, who is very clearly Eggman, and the story is about as basic as you would expect. There's a lot of text here, surprisingly, and they try to give Marine kind of a character, but it just didn't really work out, and you know, this plot is just very forgettable. So when it comes to playing Sonic Rush Adventure, it is obviously very similar to the first Sonic Rush. It's a 2D platform where you can play as either Sonic or Blaze the Cat, and it sees you boosting a lot, doing a lot of tricks, and generally going pretty fast, with some occasional platforming and occasionally fighting some enemies and a boss. Like the first game, you do go incredibly fast. You boost a ton in this game. Most of the game you're holding down the boost button, and in order to get boost, you do the tricks in the air where Sonic just starts popping off, and Blaze will just go nuts as well, but you'll accrue boost, and then you just continuously boost through these areas. And like the first Sonic Rush, it isn't the most difficult or interesting level design. It doesn't go absolutely nuts like some of the older Sonic games with a ton of routes, but again, you'll go through them really fast, and you know, it's pretty fun to just go through these levels, blasting through them. And yeah, there is some platforming that is a bit sticky here and there, and sometimes you'll be fighting enemies and it gets a little annoying. But for the most part, I would say that the 2D sections are actually really quite fun. The bosses are even pretty decent here. So why is this game not higher than even the first Sonic Rush? Unfortunately, they added in all this extra crap in between the levels where you have to do all this ship stuff, like you have to craft the ship and the parts, or you have to do these like vehicle sections where you're going from level to level on the map, and all of this side stuff. I just hated this as a kid. I just wanted to play the 2D levels, and they have all this extra crap. I don't like upgrading the ship, I don't like these missions, and I don't like all the little gimmicky stuff that they add here and there from them. I mean, it's just not fun, it's not engaging, it really pads the game out, and the game isn't even very long anyway, and it's just like, okay, well, the game's not very long, this pads it out, this is a fair amount of the game, and it sucks. And it's a shame too, because the levels are, again, pretty decent. I'd say they're like just as good as Sonic Rush's. The music's pretty good, the game looks pretty decent for a DS game, and it should be just as good as the first Sonic Rush. But thanks to all these stupid, annoying minigames, it just is a little bit lower for me. Do I recommend it still? I mean, if you love the first Sonic Rush, then go ahead, try it. But, I mean, I can say you're really not missing much if you skipped this one. And so here we have Sonic Unleashed, and I'm just combining the HD and non-HD games for this entry. I remember Sonic Unleashing releasing in 08, and I was so excited I got it the day it came out, and all these years later, I still think the game is pretty good, but it does have its flaws. The game sees Sonic fighting Eggman, and Eggman actually is able to trick Sonic by harnessing Super Sonic's energy, and he basically uses it to blast the Earth apart, releasing this giant monster known as Dark Gaia. In the process, I guess the Chaos Emeralds have a negative effect as well, turning Sonic into this ugly abomination known as the Werehog. Sonic then lands back on Earth, and it's up to him to stop Eggman and Dark Gaia. He meets up with his new friend known as Chip, and yeah, the story's fine enough. It doesn't do anything all that exciting. There is a bit of human interaction here, and again, it's fine enough. The story's pretty basic. It doesn't do anything special for a Sonic game, and the writing is pretty whatever, but I liked it. But what does this all mean for the gameplay? It means that we have two styles of play. We have the daytime stages, which have modern Sonic, at least modern for the time, blasting through these stages, going as fast as possible. And then we have the nighttime stages where you're the Werehog, where it's much more of, say, a God of War clone or a beat 'em up. Now, the daytime stages really took the boost formula from Sonic Rush and put it in a 3D environment and showed how Sonic should be made in the modern era, at least, again, modern for the time, as you just go through these levels incredibly fast. They're all really well designed, and there's just a ton going on here. And these really are some of the best levels that 3D Sonic has ever had. They are just actually really well designed. You go through some really nice 3D parts, you go through some really nice 2D parts. It was really refreshing when it came out, and even nowadays, it's still pretty refreshing how much effort was put into these 3D levels. I really do like modern Sonic, daytime Sonic stages. They're all just incredibly exhilarating, and yeah, collecting the medals sucks, but it's not a big deal. Then the nighttime stages where you're the Werehog, these are pretty whatever, honestly. A majority of these levels really do see you just beating up Eggman robots or Dark Gaia's minions, and I mean, yeah, it's pretty button mashy, there's nothing really all that exciting here, and I love me some beat 'em ups and some hack and slashes, and this is pretty mediocre for the most part. It just doesn't really have much to it. It's relatively mindless, doesn't really belong in a Sonic game, and I mean, it's not the worst thing. The platforming's okay, the stretchy arms are kind of funny, but it just really should have been a lot better, or just not in the game at all. Hey, they could be a lot worse. The game looks pretty good, and the music, no matter the version or the stage you're on, is great. I really do love the music, even the shitty Werehog battle music. Dun, dun, dun. I actually really do like it. Unfortunately, the frame rate is not very good in this game, especially on like PS3. The game is just dying sometimes, but With all that said, I still think Sonic Unleashed is a pretty decent game. If you're going to play either version, I do recommend the HD version. The Wii version and PS2 version just have way too much werehog for their own good. If you can tolerate the werehog, you have some of the best modern Sonic levels like ever, which is why they were all put in Sonic Generations as part of the Unleashed project. But either way, I think Sonic Unleashed is still a fun time. It's still a decent game, and I mean, if you like Sonic, then you probably already played it. Okay, and so here we have Sonic Colors for the DS. Now, everyone knows the main Sonic Colors, but most people forgot that there was a DS version by Dimps, and it plays just like Sonic Rush. It still has that boost gameplay, and it's not a one-to-one recreation of Sonic Colors on Wii because they just couldn't replicate that on the DS. But what we have here is actually a pretty decent Sonic game. The story is exactly the same with the Eggman land in space and Sonic and Tails thinking he's up to no good and the Wisps showing up. When it comes to the gameplay, it is basically Sonic Rush's gameplay. This basically is Sonic Rush 3, only with some Sonic Color stuff like the Wisps showing up. You're still boosting, you're still doing the tricks. Thankfully Sonic isn't popping off anymore, and the levels see you still going through blisteringly fast with a ton of boosting. You now have the Wisp abilities. Not all of them show up from the Wii version. There are even a couple exclusive ones here, and these are fine enough. They're about as gimmicky as they were in the Wii version, and nothing overstays their welcome. You don't even have to use them for a couple parts of the game. My favorite was definitely Drill or the giant shadow monster, where you just kind of absorb everything and blow up. And when it comes to this game's level design, it does not even come close to trying to replicate the Wii version. It really, again, does its own thing. It has its own levels. Sure, the themes, are the same, but it really does try to have its own level design. The controls are pretty nice. The momentum seems fine enough. And I think that this is more than a solid enough effort. Yeah, it's not the longest, and it doesn't have Blaze the Cat as a playable character, which is a shame because Sonic's friends actually show up in this game, which is different from the Wii version. But all in all, I would still say that this is actually a pretty decent Sonic game. I would say it's underrated at this point, since I don't think most people even give this game the time of day because they probably just assume it's a crummy handheld version of a Wii game, and part of me thought that too, but then I tried it and was like, oh, this is actually different, this is actually decent. I would say this game is like just as good as Sonic Rush. The music, for the most part, it still slaps, the presentation is fine, the controls are fine. I think this is a fun little time. I think if you like 2D Sonic, this is definitely worth checking out. Most people, I think, are really sleeping on this one, and that's a shame because what we have is pretty good. Maybe you should totally check it out. So Sonic Rush released in 2005 and really was the start of Sonic's entire boost gameplay that he really became known for in the late 2000s and 2010s. It all got started here on the DS. I remember getting this game pretty much when it came out. I had a DS as just a kid, and I loved this game. I played this game all the time. I played through it multiple times, and that nostalgia probably plays a factor on where this game places on the list, but I still think that this is actually pretty good and the best of the Rush trilogy. The plot of this game is a little different from most Sonic games. It features Blaze the Cat. This was her first game. This was her introduction as a princess from another dimension, and she even has her own Dr. Eggman, Eggman Nega, and so she has to team up with Sonic for them to defeat the Eggman. And the story's pretty alright here. It actually has some decent development. They really flesh Blaze out, and I generally liked her. Sonic and Friends is fine also. The story, yeah, I quite liked it. Now this gameplay, it was again the first to introduce the boost formula to Sonic the Hedgehog. It's in a 2D format obviously, but really what it sees you doing is going from point A to B incredibly fast, doing tricks and boosting. You'll be going at incredibly high speeds, you'll be doing all these cool looking tricks where Sonic and Blaze pop off in order to build more boosts, so then you can go through these stages faster and faster. There is even a homing attack here, and you'll sometimes fight some enemies. The platforming is pretty basic here, the momentum feels a little weird since it's all about the boosting. But for the most part, I found this gameplay incredibly exhilarating for a 2D platformer on such a small handheld, and I remember as a kid just being blown away with how fast I could go in this game, and looking back, yeah, you really do go really fast in this game, and it's actually pretty nice. Now, does the level design stack up against, say, Sonic Advance or some of the early 2D Sonic games? No, it doesn't. It's a lot more basic, and sometimes it can have that auto-run, autopilot feeling, but I still really did like the boosting formula here, and I think that it's actually done really well. I like how you don't just play as Sonic, who plays how he usually does, but you also get to play as Blaze, who's a little slower, but she can also do this hover, and playing as her is great. She's basically just Sonic, but a little different. You play through all the levels twice over. Once is her, once is Sonic, and I didn't really mind this, actually. It's not a Sonic Hero situation. The game isn't that long. They play a bit different, and the game was actually just an incredibly high amount of fun. I think it's some of the best handheld action Sonic has ever had. It's not all perfect though. The game does have some really annoying, tedious special stages where it's a half pipe and you just go back and forth with the stylus, and the boss fights were pretty awful through and through. The game isn't exactly very long either, taking maybe a couple hours to beat it most. That's why I replayed through this game so much as a kid. The music though, the music's really good in this game, and the game looked pretty good. It was pretty early in the DS's lifespan, and I always thought it looked nice. I have a lot of nostalgia for this game, playing it in elementary school, but even aside from that, all these years later, still think it's a pretty good game, and I do absolutely recommend it. And so here we have Sonic Colors, initially releasing on the Wii in 2010. It is now available though on pretty much everything. So Sonic Colors, they really went back to basics and said, what if we just took the daytime stages of Sonic Unleashed and made that the whole game basically? And what do you know, we have a pretty good game here. We have one of the best 3D Sonic games. The story is about Eggman creating an amusement park in space to atone for his sins. Sonic and Tails obviously don't buy it, and I'll leave it at that. The story's pretty basic, but it's also pretty lighthearted and fun, and I actually did like the story here. It also brings in the Wisps, which everyone thought was going to be super gimmicky when it was coming out. I remember everybody, including me, was really skeptical about it, but playing through the game with it, even nowadays, yeah, it's not actually that gimmicky. The Wisps do add to Sonic's moveset, and I think they're actually pretty fun to use. And thanks to the whole theme park thing going on, these levels actually have a ton of variety to them, not only in their design and how they're made, but just visually as well. I really do like the visual design of Sonic Colors, and I think that the game is actually able to mix it up quite a bit. These are some of the best levels that Sonic has ever had as well. I'm really not just saying it. There's a lot of really fun levels here. The Wisps do add to them as well. There's a ton of different abilities Sonic gets from them, whether it's the drill or the chomper or like a bomb, or a rocket, or something else entirely, and I think it actually adds to the gameplay. It enhances the boost gameplay. What a novel concept that Sonic Team tried here, where they add something that makes the gameplay even better. But the general boosting gameplay, it's really fun here. You go really fast. The 2D sections are pretty good. The 3D sections are fine enough, but they're nothing amazing. And I just really had a fun time with this game, whether it was back when it came out all those years later, or even nowadays. I still think that this game is pretty fun. It's still pretty good. The game looked amazing for the Wii. It has a wonderful soundtrack through and through. That new version, the soundtrack is just fucked, but the old version has an amazing soundtrack. It's one of the best platformers on the Wii. It's the best Sonic game on the Wii, and I still think it's totally worth playing nowadays. And if for some reason you haven't played this game and you like Sonic games, no. Go try this one. It's pretty cheap nowadays, and again, it's available on all consoles now, so just go ahead and try it. And so here we have the latest Sonic game as of the making of this video, Sonic Frontiers, releasing on pretty much everything. Sonic Frontiers, it's definitely gotten a lot of traction, and a lot of people have been talking about the game for good and bad. A lot of people feel many different ways about this game. I've seen some people love this game, say it's one of the best Sonic games ever, and I've seen some people really shit on this game and say it sucks. I'm in the former. I think Sonic Frontiers is actually one of the best Sonic games to come out in years, and it's really a good step in the right direction. And when comparing all the Sonic Boost games, things are in the right place right now. Will they continue to be in the right place? That's up to the future to decide, but I think Sonic Frontiers is actually pretty good. The game is about Sonic, Tails, and Amy exploring these islands looking for the Chaos Emeralds. There's some weird kind of energy going on, and they all get sucked into this island, and basically Sonic has to free his friends from this weird digital prison looking thing, and then there's all this stuff going on with Eggman and this new other character, this strange girl, and I'll just leave it at that because the story is actually one of the best parts of this game. When it comes to the story and the writing and the characters, I actually think it's really good. The characters are mature, they're grown up, they've had all these experiences from before. They constantly reference old Sonic games, which as a longtime Sonic fan I really liked. New people who've never played those old Sonic games, I don't know how they're going to feel about this, but I really liked the writing, the throwbacks, the callbacks, the characters, their depth. I think that it was all actually really good. I think the story's got a really good mystery behind it, and I really wanted to see what would happen. It's all about the Chaos Emeralds, it's all about chaos, and I really did like the story here. I think it was pretty good. I know some people didn't like it, but I quite liked it. And the same could be said about the gameplay. The game takes place in these giant open zones, and yeah, it does look a little Unreal Engine 5 acid-y, and it does have some Breath of the Wild elements where it's like this big open area to explore, but this game really does do its own thing. And really the core gameplay is this open world exploration. There's a ton of collectibles here, there's boss fights basically, there's enemies, there's a bunch of little platforming challenges, and then of course there's finding these cyberspace levels that are throwbacks to old Sonic games, which are his memories, and these are pretty whatever. These are more like traditional Sonic boost levels where you just go A to B and you go as fast as you can. There's red rings, there's platforming, there's enemies, homing attack, all that good stuff. But you're really not in those cyberspace levels for the most part. Most of the time you are exploring, again, the big open zones. There's a ton to see and collect here, whether it's the medals for the characters, or it's the gears, keys, chaos emeralds, etc. I actually really did like exploring this world. I really did like collecting everything. I really think Sonic's moveset is great for an open world because there's so many different ways you can go about these challenges. Sure, there's no like spin dash, but Sonic still has a ton of other stuff to it. You go really fast in this game. The boost gameplay is really good, and I really did like zipping around this open world. It just felt really nice, and genuinely, I liked exploring. There's a bunch of little easy puzzles here to uncover the map, and these are like elementary school easy. Sure, there's nothing that exciting about them, but I really do think the game is actually pretty fun. I had a fun time playing it, and I was genuinely shocked with how much there was to explore, how much there was to see. These open worlds are actually pretty big. Yeah, they can feel a bit lifeless at times, but there's a lot to these. It's not a bunch of useless, empty space. There's actually stuff here, and I really, again, liked it. There's a bunch of enemies you can fight, some big robots that are like mini boss fights, and then of course the big boss fights, which I think are a mixed bag, honestly. I think some of these are not very good, and some of them are pretty cool. You're supersonic for the big bosses, so that's cool. But the combat in this game, while very basic and simple, I don't know, I still thought it was fine enough. Sure, it wasn't challenging, it didn't do anything interesting really, but it was fine enough. I'm not playing Sonic for engaging combat. To be honest, this is better than the Werehog's combat, and the Werehog had more depth than this, so I think this is actually pretty solid. A majority of the game, you aren't doing the combat. You're exploring, you're doing the platforming challenges, you're going really fast, and you know what? I think this game absolutely nails it. Does it mess up a few things? Yeah, like I mentioned, cyberspace levels, not so great. The momentum can be a little whack in those. The 2D sections actually aren't all that great, which is kind of weird that we've really regressed at this point where the 2D sections aren't really that great. The 3D's the best. The draw distance sucks. The graphics are pretty fine, but the draw distance unfortunately sucks. Music slaps as always. Big the Cat and His Fishing, I really like this. I really like how you can just break the game's economy with it. If you don't want to collect a bunch of stuff or do all of that, you can just go fishing, which I think is a great opportunity to let you really play how you want to play. Like I mentioned earlier, the game has a ton of callbacks, throwbacks to old Sonic games. There's a ton of lore here. All of that's really great. And this game really appeals to longtime Sonic fans more than anyone else. New Sonic fans or people who haven't really played most of the games, I don't know how much they're going to get out of this. I think that they're not going to like it as much as the longtime fans, but as a longtime fan, someone who grew up with Sonic, played all the games, really played like all the games, I love it. I just love all of the throwbacks. I love a lot of what this game is putting down. I think this is a great step in the right direction, and I think that they should totally continue to refine this formula if they actually stick with it. It's clear this game isn't everyone's cup of tea, but I think the general consensus is that it is pretty good. And with that in mind, I absolutely recommend it. I know that some people were saying it was a little pricey to begin with, but I'm already seeing it like half off a little bit later, so totally go check it out. Sonic Frontiers, it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, and I actually really did enjoy my time. It's probably one of my favorite Sonic games now, so go check it out. Sonic Generations is what I believe to be not only one of the best 3D Sonic games, but the best boost Sonic game of them all. I remember when it came out back in 2011, came out the same day as Uncharted 3, funny enough, but I was just blown away by this game when I played it. It really was a celebration of Sonic, and it relived some of the series' greatest moments and put it into a new context, and I just really, even all these years later, think that it still hasn't been beaten, really. And the story this time around was Eggman teaming up with old Eggman to make this time eater that basically sends Sonic through all of his old memories, and Sonic teams up with himself, classic Sonic, to take him out. The story, again, it really was just a celebration of Sonic, and the gameplay is absolutely reflective of that in pretty much every sense. You play as modern and classic Sonic. Modern Sonic really is that boost formula that we got from Unleashed, where you just go as fast as possible, you blast through these levels. There's a ton of different ways and routes through these levels. There's homing attack enemies, there's grind rails, there's boosting, there's drifting, there's a ton to these levels. These are the best 3D Sonic levels of the last like 15 years. Not even close. They're better than Unleashed, they're better than Colors. I love the 3D levels in Sonic Generations. I think they're excellent. Classic Sonic is great too. It's some really good 2D Sonic action. I won't lie, Sonic Mania's got better levels, design, and overall better gameplay, but Sonic Generations 2D stuff is really good as well. Classic Sonic is no slouch. I really do like the levels. I love how it's a throwback to, you know, all the classic Sonic staples, not just Green Hill and Chemical Plant. We've got a ton of Sonic Adventure, Sonic Heroes, Sonic Colors. They throw back a ton of different stuff here, and they actually really do remix these levels in interesting and new ways, and as a Sonic fan, I really just loved these levels. The presentation and the frame rate were great, and then the music is just legendary. The music is so good in this game. There's a bunch of new remixes that are great, a bunch of the old stuff's there. It's all really good. The game had a decent enough length, and it was just a really solid 3D platformer. Above all else, the game was just incredibly fun. I had a great time with it, and I have no problem coming back nowadays and still having a ton of fun with it. It's one of the more replayable Sonic games. It's not super long, don't get me wrong, but I really did actually enjoy it. When it comes to that boost gameplay, I don't think any game in the Sonic series got it better than Sonic Generations. It could change in the future. It could totally change in the future. Sonic Frontiers 2, or whatever they call it, could totally be amazing. But I think that Sonic Generations is, to me personally, is going to kind of just always have the best boost gameplay. It's one of the best modern Sonic games, one of the best 3D Sonic games, one of the best Sonic games, period. Sonic, Sonic, Sonic. That's all we've been talking about today, and that's where I'm going to leave everyone at. Hope everyone has a wonderful day. Let me know your favorite down below, all that good stuff. How do you like Sonic Frontiers? If you made it to this part of the video, comment bricks. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.